Facebook, hello Instagram, hello YouTube later. This is Thursday night, so let's see, I think the Facebook just started, so I should start over. Hello Facebook, hello Instagram, hello folks on YouTube later. So it's Thursday night. Thursdays we've been doing a class on the Yamas, which is the first limb of yoga. And the Yamas, if you're not familiar, are the first of 8 limbs of yoga. Our poses are the 3rd limb, breathwork is the 4th limb. But the Yamas are just about like how to act in the world, how to be a good person, basically. Things to do and things not to do. And hi, Sam. And so I just thought it'd be neat to do a class where we kind of go through them because I think they're really important. And they're really important in this time that we're living through because it's such a weird time. And I think it's important to like get in touch with, what we're really about, stick with our principles, see how they can apply in this time, and really like embrace them. And so, hi, Sam. And so I'm enjoying this, going through this. This is the 4th of 5 parts of the Yamas, so there'll be another Yamas class next week. But then that'll be all 5, there's 5 of them. And so then the week after that, so in 2 weeks, we'll start the Niyamas class, which is the 2nd limb of yoga. And those are 5 more principles, and they're more about like personal things, like how to treat yourself. And so I think that'll be really cool too, because I think that's super important in this time when we're spending so much time on our own, potentially, and being at home and just thinking about all these things. So tonight, let's just take a moment before we start talking and just kind of center ourselves. So however you're sitting, hands can rest on your knees. You can close your eyes. Take a nice big long inhale and a nice long exhale. Just let your awareness be there on your breath. Following your inhale, flowing in. Following your exhale, flowing out. And then treating this time and yourself with some reverence and recognizing that this is all a part of the divine. Set an intention, whatever you'd like to focus on for yourself during these next 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however long we're here. What do you want to focus on? It can be anything. It's not a quiz. There's no right or wrong. It's just for you. Whatever you want to focus on, hold that in the space of your heart and just take a couple more nice long breaths. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. So, as I was saying, we're working our way through the Yamas, and tonight we're talking about the 4th Yama, and it is called Brahmacharya. And Brahmacharya is a really interesting principle of yoga. So, if you've ever heard of the celibate yogi, like yogi up in the mountains who abstains from sexual relations and, doesn't do anything like that. This is the principle that gives us that idea. But I do not believe that that's the way that this principle is supposed to be interpreted. So the interesting thing about yogic ideas and yogic principles is they come from old texts that are in Sanskrit. And so Sanskrit can be translated a bunch of different ways. And my meditation teacher the other night made a joke or said there is an old yogic joke or old Sanskrit joke that every Sanskrit word can be, I'm not going to remember all the things she said, but I think she said a yoga pose, a principle, an animal, a sexual position, and something else. I don't remember what else she said, but point being, there's like so many ways to translate the words and then ways to interpret even the translation of the word. And so Brahmacharya is an interesting one. And like I said, it's where we get the idea of yogis wanting to be celibate and thinking that that's like a good idea and part of what they're supposed to be doing. For certain people practicing in a certain way, that might make a lot of sense. But I like to think of yoga as something practical that we can do in our daily lives. And also, I don't think it's meant to make us not live our lives. And certainly, having relationships and being in relationships is a big part of living life. And so I'm not sure that that's meant to be that way. The way it's more modernly interpreted is to talk about how we are using and maintaining and thinking about our energy, our state of mind, how we're expending ourselves, if we're overindulging, if we're giving too much and just being blatantly tired at the end of the day, that kind of thing. And so we think about this kind of energy within ourselves and energy in the world and try to find like a very deep respect for it. And part of the way that we can find a deep respect for it is, at least in tantric terms where my lineage comes from, we think of everything as divine. So ourselves, certainly, the people around us, everyone we have relationships with, the energy within us and everything that we're interacting with. And when we can have that reverence and that appreciation for everything as divine, then we find that respecting the energy of ourselves and others makes more sense. As far as actual reference to relationships goes, I really love the way that one of my teachers interprets this principle of yoga, Brahmacharya. She says rather than feeling the need to be celibate, what we can do is work to respect all relationships. So if you know someone is in a relationship, see that relationship as divine, just as you would your own relationship with your own partner. And so don't do anything to undermine a relationship that exists, because those relationships are divine. And you can take the idea of like, don't say anything in front of one part of a relationship that you wouldn't say to the other partner in that relationship. Same thing with your relationships. Don't say anything that you wouldn't say in front of your partner to someone else. And so that's kind of an interesting way to interpret the principle, just as far as like relationships go. So I hope that makes sense. But I think this idea of, respecting our energy, not overindulging, is a really, really good one. And it really comes into play in our society today because it's so easy to overindulge and it's almost encouraged, right? Like people are, that's what we're advertised and pushed to do, right? Like eat more, drink more, do more. And that doesn't always serve us. And I think all of us, we can pick the example of if you overindulge in eating. All of us have come to a place where, you've eaten too much and then it's just uncomfortable. Like, why did you eat so much? It's not helping you. If anything, it's harming you, right? You cross a point where the food is no longer just there for the nourishment of your body. It's now, making you gain weight, making you feel lethargic, all of these things. And so if you can, hi Zoe, I see you watching. So if you can keep those things in mind, then it starts to bring us into a different kind of balance with our life and with, not overindulging. Now the thing is though, it really isn't about not finding joy, because that's not the idea at all. And in fact, when you start to notice these things, I think it's easier to embrace joy and even pleasure. So joy and pleasure are okay, but we don't want to go to excess, right? And if you really get honest with yourself, when you start going to excess, when you get into even like addictive behaviors, then that pleasure and joy is no longer really there. You're seeking something that existed at one time, but now you've pushed so far beyond that it's not even happening anymore. And so then we have to think, I'm no longer respecting this energy, this divinity in whatever it was that I was enjoying and I was doing, and can I check myself back with that? Certainly our society has a serious, serious problem. Oh, yay, Alia, thanks. I'm so glad you're there. Our society has a serious, serious problem with this, with excess, like just thinking about how much plastic is in our oceans, thinking about how much stuff we have. One book I was reading recently about different yoga things was talking about, just the fact that we have storage units to hold all our extra stuff. And there's so many storage units in this country. It's crazy, right? And I'm not one to talk. I mean, I have too much stuff too, and I'm constantly like, how can I not have so much stuff? But it's just part of how our society works. And we should say, as I was talking earlier about respecting the divinity within yourself, it gets back to the loving kindness too, right? Don't be hard on yourself. When you start to notice these things and you start to say, oh, I am going to excess, I am, doing this too much, things are unbalanced, like I'm feeling overextended, be kind to yourself and just notice. And then you can start to adjust, but you don't have to like beat yourself up about it when you start to notice that you're not quite in this whole Brahmacharya thing. Brahmacharya, the word is sometimes translated as walking with God. And sometimes that gets us back to the celibacy thing, like you're in relationship with God, you don't need to be in relationship with anybody else, which is an interesting interpretation. But I think it's really interesting, and it kind of points us to really trying to embrace this idea that everything is divine. And really, I encourage you to try to think of that as you go through your day. When you encounter another person, think in your mind like, the same light that's in me, the light that is God, is also in this person. When you're out walking around and you're seeing the trees and the flowers outside, this is a great exercise for right now. If you go outside, and I encourage you to go outside, keep social distancing, but go outside for a walk. And when you look around with like fresh eyes and with the idea that everything around you, whether you want to call it source or divinity or God, it's all God, or it's all created by God, and so it's all divine, it's all beautiful. And when you can put that in your mind and think about that, it gives you a different reverence, and I think makes you kind of treat things differently, respect the energy of different things. And so I think, it's a really interesting yogic principle to really sink your teeth into. I know when I first heard of it, it was like, this is the celibacy one, and I was like, well, that's not really fun. But I think it's a great principle and one that is good to embrace and great to embrace right now. If you want to really embrace it right now, since you're at home, you can like clean out all your stuff, right? And get rid of the excess. I have not started doing that yet, even though I've told myself it would be a good idea. Okay, I do want to do a little tiny bit of yoga today or tonight, wherever you are. A little tiny bit. We're going to play with forward fold and we're going to play with eagle pose. I think it's an interesting pose, but the idea here is, and we'll talk through it as we go, is that, not being overstimulated, turning inward, but also listening to that divinity within yourself and respecting that relationship with yourself. So if we're respecting all relationships, one of the most important relationships is the relationship with yourself. And I want you to go to the place that makes the sense for you. And don't push yourself too far, because we're all in different places. And when we think about that relationship with ourselves, then we can see where do we need to be in our practice. All right, so if you've got your mat, you can go over to your mat. I'm going to back up to mine. All right. So go ahead. I think I'm going to stay facing forward today. I think you guys can see me this way. So let's just go ahead, take a big inhale, reach both arms to the sky, just see how that feels. Take the right arm down, reach up through the left. Take a big breath. And then inhale back to the center, exhale over to the left. So go back and forth a couple times, just seeing how that feels. And see if you can just have that idea of this body is divine, the air I'm breathing is divine, I am divine. Feeling that relationship with yourself. One more time, over to the left. And then inhale all the way up. Reach both arms up. Maybe take a little bitty back bend, but keep your core strong, keep your legs strong. And then let's just go ahead and fold forward. So we spend so much time being overstimulated during our daily life, even now in our houses. I don't know about you guys, but I have Zoom meeting after go-to meeting after Zoom meeting for all sorts of things. And so even though we're inside, trying to social distance, being alone, we can still get overstimulated. And then we want to look at our phones and our Instagram and watch Netflix and all the things. And one of the beautiful things I love about yoga, one of the beautiful things I love about forward folds is just having permission to turn inward, to let go of that overstimulation, to bring balance back to our energy. Take another breath. We're just letting the head hang down. And then nice and slowly bend the knees. Nice and easy. We'll just roll ourselves all the way back up. The head can come up last. Nice and easy. All right, so we're going to progress into eagle pose. But bear with me. If you know how to do eagle pose, don't jump straight to it. So I think it's kind of fun to go through the progression. So let's just take our arms, reach them all the way up overhead, and then sit down nice and deep into a chair pose. Doesn't have to be a huge, deep one, but it's as deep as it feels good for you. Remember, we're thinking about the relationship with ourselves, so make sure that it's feeling right for you. And then take your right arm over your left and just give yourself a big hug and sit deep into this chair. So if you want to stay right here, you're just staying right here, feeling the power of your legs. If you like, you can shift your weight to your right foot and lift your left foot up off the ground. So these are options, right? Listen to yourself. Maybe switch and do the opposite, lifting the right foot up. And then back to the center. Unwind the arms, left arm on top. Give yourself a big hug. If you want to, you can drop your chin. You can decide. Maybe we shift our weight again, lifting up the left foot. And then switch and lift up the right foot. And then switch. And then let's inhale all the way up again. And exhale, fold forward. Just like we did before, we'll hold it for a couple breaths. And then just like we did before, bend the knees. Roll ourselves all the way back up. Before we go back into our chair, let's stretch across the front of our shoulders a little bit. So we did a little back bend when we reached up to the sky, but let's do a little bit bigger one. Take the arms back behind you, find a nice tight clasp. Dial the elbows back if that feels good. Remember, you're listening to yourself. If you want to, you can straighten the arms. I'll go sideways for a moment just so you can see. And if you like, the arms can come away from your spine. Maybe you look up towards the ceiling, hug the belly in. Nice strong legs, root through your feet. So listening to yourself, you can stop wherever makes sense for you. If you want to take this into a back bend, keeping the low back long, hugging the belly button to the spine, lift up through the pelvic floor, and maybe you look up a little towards the ceiling. Think about shoulder blades on the back. Maybe the arms come away from your spine a little bit. And then we'll let that go. Shake out both arms. All right. So this time we're going to get a little further into our eagle pose. Now, remember, we're respecting the relationship with ourselves. We're respecting our own energy. When we get into our yoga practice, if we start pushing ourselves into poses that we're not ready for, sometimes we get really extended, either one works, and sometimes we can hurt ourselves, which of course is not good for our relationship with ourselves and not good for our energy. So there's options to this pose, and I want you to take the options that work for you. Now, not taking a pose we're not ready for is not the same as not pushing our edge. So do push your edge and see what works for you, but think about that relationship with yourself. Think about the divinity of it and what makes sense for you right now. So we're gonna work our way to eagle pose. If you've never done this pose before, it's okay. You can play around and you can see where you wanna go. So just like we did before, inhale the arms up, bend the knees, chair pose. Sit deep into your legs. So let's start with our arms, both arms forward. Let's go right arm over the left, crossing at the elbows. Hands can hug the shoulders, or you can see if your hands can wrap around each other. Then standing on your left foot, Lift your right foot up off the ground, and you can either go balanced like we did before. You can also keep both feet on the ground, or you might start to cross the leg over, and you might wrap the toes around. Sitting deep into the legs, maybe lift the elbows, drop the shoulders a little bit. And then we'll unwind, come all the way back up to stand, and the arms can come down. Give both legs a wiggle. So realize the sides are different, so we'll try the second side, and it might look a little different. I know my two sides are different, so it's just part of being a mammal, if you've ever wondered why you're sighted, because your brain is sighted. So poses feel different on each side. But let's try the other side. So knees bend, chair pose, sitting deep into the legs. This time we'll go left arm over the right, crossing at the elbows. You can give yourself a hug again, or you can wrap the hands around, you can decide. This time we'll shift our weight to our right leg, lift our left foot up off the ground, crossing the left leg over. Maybe it hooks, maybe it doesn't. You can keep both feet on the ground if you'd rather. Lifting the elbows, dropping the shoulders. Take a couple breaths. And we'll unwind all the way back up to stand. Reach the arms up high, and let's fold forward again. Reaching all the way to the floor. Take a couple breaths. This time, if you want to, you can sway a little side to side. And then back to the center, bend in the knees. Let's roll ourselves up once again, all the way up to stand. Let's try this eagle pose one more time. So, if you hadn't done it before, you got to try it once. Now you can kind of see where your edge is. But again, respect that relationship with yourself. Find the divinity in it and do what makes sense for you. So let's try it again. Knees bend, chair pose, sitting deep into your legs. This time let's go legs first. So standing on the left foot, lifting up the right foot, crossing that foot over. And then both arms forward, left over the right, crossing at the elbows. Lift the elbows, drop the shoulders. This time, if this is a great pose for you and you want a little challenge, you can drop your elbows down and bow into your eagle. I'm going to fall over. And just have that little extra turning inward, cutting off the outward overstimulation. And then we'll unwind that and come all the way up to stand. Bring the arms down, take a big breath. Shake everything out. Let's try the other side. So knees bend, chair pose. Doing the legs first this time, shifting to the right. Crossing the left leg up and over. Maybe it hooks, maybe it doesn't. Both arms forward, right over the left this time. Crossing at the elbows. Again, if you want the feet on the ground or you're hugging your shoulders, that's beautiful. If this feels good and you want that challenge, you can drop the head. You can bow it down. Bowing to the divinity within yourself. Respecting the relationship with yourself. And then go ahead on back up. And we'll unwind, reaching it up to the sky. And then the arms can come down. Shake everything out. Eagle pose is such an interesting pose. I think when people first look at it, it seems very inaccessible because you're all twisted up and you're balancing. But I love the progressions that you can go into getting into that pose. And I like doing it even with my beginner students because I think it's kind of fun. And I think people get surprised that they can get into it more quickly than they think they can. All right, let's have another forward fold, but this time, let's take the feet just a little wide, and then take the hands back behind us. Find that nice tight clasp again. So we're squeezing the hands together rather than letting them fall open. Squeeze them nice and tight. Take the elbows back, lift up through the heart, keeping nice strong legs. Let's fold forward. Maybe the knuckles reach up to the sky. Maybe they reach all the way over your head. Take a couple breaths. And then you keep your hands together, or you can let them go. We'll inhale all the way back up. Let's go ahead, turn. If you're on your mat, turn towards the top of your mat. If you weren't that way already, take a big inhale, reach the arms to the sky. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale halfway up, nice flat back. Exhale, fold in. If you want to go down through a vinyasa, through a cobra or an up dog, you can. If not, you can come with me straight to downward dog. Just take a couple breaths. As you do, you might notice if in your downward dog you're expending more energy than you need to. Where can you relax in this pose? It might not seem like a relaxy pose, but there are places that you can soften in downward dog. You can get the shoulder blades on the back a little more. You can use the fingers and press through the hands so that the weight is taken out of the wrists. You might soften the knees so it's easier to have your spine long. And then nice and easy, let's all just go ahead, come down onto all fours. I'm going to get you into a Shavasana because I think that's a great pose to think about. Not expending much energy and the relationship with ourselves. But let's just move our spine a little bit more before we do. Take an inhale, look up to the sky, and then exhale, round the back up to the ceiling. Just back and forth like that a few times. And then you can go ahead and then come to neutral and just swing the legs around in the front and lay onto your back. So just a short little sequence tonight, just to play with feeling that turning inward, reducing excess, reducing overstimulation, and then also playing with that relationship with ourselves. What is right for me in this moment? How can I honor myself as divine? How can I honor that relationship? So go ahead, find your Shavasana. Arms can be beside you, palms can face up towards the sky, legs can be out long. And it's interesting, right? Sometimes we can see that it's time to let go, it's time to relax, it's time to rest, and we resist it. And so part of our Brahmacharya is to be able to see that and to respect it and to let that happen. So sometimes when we come to Shavasana, there's still an energetic holding going on. Our legs are still holding themselves in a position, our arms are still holding themselves in a position. And so as you lay here in Shavasana, can you just let that go? If you feel energies being expended in some part of your body, let it go. One Kashmir Shaivite book I have gives a lot of instruction on Shavasana and a lot of instruction on letting that muscle tension go, reducing those places where you're still expending energy, letting everything be heavy, really sink into the ground. We get into yoga and we're always controlling our breath, which was something we should be doing in yoga. We're doing our ujjayi breath or some other kind of breathing. And then we get to Shavasana and we're still controlling. So let that go too. Just let the air move in and out on its own. One of my favorite things to do in meditation is to feel like the air is breathing you. Maybe just feel that right now. And then our mind is another place where we end up with excess energy being expended. Our mind wants to go, 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 go. As I always say, you don't have to ask it to be quiet, but whatever it's coming up with to tell you about, you don't have to follow that energy. You don't have to grasp at it. If you notice yourself following it, just gently remind yourself, just like with your body, to let go, to soften, and just be here. Enjoy these last few minutes on your mat. And then when you start to feel ready, nice and slowly draw your awareness back into your body. Without controlling, you can just notice your breath again. Maybe start to wiggle your hands and your feet, your fingers and your toes. Maybe reach your arms up overhead, have a big stretch, whatever feels good for you. Maybe give yourself another hug. And you can get an extra hug if you switch with Yamas on top. You can bend your knees, you can make your way over to your right side. Take your time, nice and slowly, don't have to rush. You can make your way up to seated when you're ready. And we'll find legs crossed. Hands can rest on our knees, eyes can stay closed for a moment. So as you go off your mat and out through your life off your mat, the yoga doesn't stop there, and that's kind of the beauty of the first two limbs of yoga, is that they're principles that apply to our life, not just the time on our mat. So think about this idea of Brahmacharya. Think about how it can apply in your life. Notice where there's excess. Notice where there's overstimulation. Respect the energy there. See when you need to take a break, when you need to take a rest, when you need to reduce something. And also just think about the divinity in all things, including the divinity in yourself and in your relationships. Not only with others, the divinity in others' relationships as well, but also that relationship with yourself. Let's bring our hands to touch at our heart. Whatever your intention was at the beginning of our little practice together, if you caught that and you set one, take your mind back to it for a moment with kindness and non-judgment. Just check in with yourself and see how it went. And then most importantly, honoring that relationship with yourself and honoring the light that exists within you. Thank yourself for coming to yoga in this moment. I thank you all for being here with me as well. And I honor the light within you and within all beings. Namaste.